This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Leaders from around the world start arriving in Beijing for the second Belt and Road Forum. At least 50 people perish after heavy rains pound the coastal region in the eastern parts of South Africa. And what African leaders are proposing to address the transition in Sudan and the conflict in Libya. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Karen Roberts, live in Nairobi. Panina joins me now with all your business headlines.
Thank you, Karen. And coming up on Africa Live Business, global commodities giant Olam offers to buy Nigerian Miller, and a special investigation into the extent of gold smuggling in Africa. I'll have details of those stories and plenty more in about half an hour's time from now. Karen, back to you.
Thank you very much, Panina. World leaders are arriving in Beijing for the second Belt and Road Forum, which begins on Thursday. President Xi Jinping has met with his Chilean counterpart, Sebastián Pinera. President Xi said Chile is an important partner in building the Belt and Road Initiative, and the two countries should take the opportunity to deepen mutual trust and pragmatic cooperation. Pinera said Chile supports the BRI and wants to work with China to increase regional connectivity. President Xi also met with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev. Xi said cooperation between the two countries has achieved fruitful results and benefited the two peoples. He said both sides should promote bilateral trade and investment, as well as cooperation in various sectors. The Chinese leader also met Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Mozambique's President Filipe Nyusi, Myanmar's State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, a high-profile Japanese delegation, and International Monetary Fund Chief Christine Lagarde. Xi said he appreciates the role of the IMF and other international organisations in the Belt and Road Initiative. He also said that he hoped the voices of emerging markets will be better heard as the IMF carries out reforms. Meanwhile, President Xi has sent a congratulatory message to a Belt and Road think tank, calling for efforts to enhance mutual understanding and common ground. Well, the second Belt and Road Forum taking place in Beijing has attracted a lot of attention in South Africa, along with the rest of the continent. Here's CGTN's Noel Mwakuku with the details.
The Belt and Road Initiative has not only brought massive investment opportunities to the African continent, but also promoted development of the economy and the trade of participating countries, especially the emerging economies. It has also played a positive role in further strengthening people-to-people exchanges and cooperation between China and Africa.
The One Belt, One Road initiative is important to connect people of emerging economies and to ensure that there is greater people-to-people cooperation. And it's wonderful to see that that results in better investment into the African continent, better connectivity between our Chinese people and counterparts and African, and overall the world needs to be a better place because of that.
The construction of the One Belt, One Road initiative is in line with the general trend of economic globalization.
China has got something that we don't have in South Africa. South Africa has got something that China doesn't have, but critical to it is that it is not just China in one point and South Africa in the other point, but the connectivity that road and route makes. It says, you know, each and everyone can make a contribution for such connection of those dots, and we can contribute into the world over. So we're so excited to be part and also supporting these initiatives because they are in line with what our government seeks to do.
The initiative has not only enhanced interconnectivity between participating countries, but the positive results have also benefited the world. Noel Mwakuku, CGTN.
Well, infrastructure is a key driver for progress and economic growth in Africa, but the continent's vast infrastructure deficit remains a constraint on its growth. The Belt and Road Initiative is, however, creating a fresh wave of investment in Africa's road, rail, port and energy infrastructure, making the continent more connected internally and with the outside world. CGTN's Beatrice Marshall looks at how China's Belt and Road Initiative is helping shape and advance Africa's development priorities.
Over the last decade, China has spent billions of dollars constructing roads, railways, ports and industrial economic zones in Africa, aimed at boosting the continent's trade and development. And at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, or FOCAC summit last year, China announced a new $60 billion fund towards the continent's development in 8 areas. Key among these were industrial promotion and infrastructure connectivity.
It's geared towards bringing on board everyone. The current trend of development on planet Earth is a development that cannot afford to leave anyone behind. And I believe that's what China needs. China is trying to promote.
The Belt and Road Initiative is forging economic, political and security linkages between China and Africa. Already, East Africa, through Chinese funding of ports, roads and railways, has developed into a central part of the maritime Silk Road. In the north, the Egyptian Suez Canal's economic zone is integrating with China's Belt and Road Initiative to boost connectivity and global trade. And the Chinese-funded Djibouti-Addis Ababa Railway is connecting Ethiopia to the maritime trade routes of the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. Alongside these, the African Union's Development Agency, NEPAD, recently unveiled an ambitious multi-billion project, the African Integrated High-Speed Railway Network, aimed at connecting African capitals by building and improving existing national networks.
Belt and Road is a mechanism very important for Senegal because it is developing highway and links between regions. As we built a highway from Dakar to Touba and Dakar Arena in the locality of Diamniadio.
The Maritime Silk Road will establish economic passages through a chain of seaports from the South China Sea to Africa that will direct trade to and from China. Already, about 37 African countries have signed documents on the Belt and Road Cooperation. The Belt and Road Initiative is also happening at a time when the African Continental Free Trade Area, the CFTA, is set to come into force, bringing with it a market of 1.2 billion people and the promise of greater trade with China.
I think it facilitates a greater connectivity between the different countries. I think also, for example, it's very difficult to transport things between the countries, so it will make that easier and the connection will also be easier.
It is estimated that Africa will need over $100 billion annually for 10 years to meet its infrastructural requirements. Now, the African Development Bank says that if Africa positions itself well, it can source some of this from the One Belt, One Road initiative and channel it to the African Union's master plan. So through the One Belt, One Road initiative, Africa's interests are converging with China's. And in the process, they are helping to shape and advance Africa's development priorities. Beatrice Marshall, CGTN, Beijing, China.
Well, the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars Railway is a cross-border transport and logistics project linking Georgia, Turkey and Azerbaijan. It also connects wider Central Asia and the Caucasus regions to China and Western Europe. Angelo Coppola looks at the project and how African countries could learn from it.
The project fits into plans to increase cross-border development between countries in the region, while also fitting into the larger Belt and Road Initiative, which will connect China and Europe overland and oversea. It's provided some key lessons for African countries.
I think it's important to think about each country's infrastructure needs, not as standalone needs, but countries have to come together and think of their needs as complementing each other and form a vision of a corridor.
Financing projects of this nature was tough for the three countries initially. African countries have found similar challenges, but if there's political will and commitment from leaders, it's possible.
Certainly there's scope for some of the bigger African countries to extend finance. There's scope for some of our domestic multilateral banks, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, the Eastern African Development Bank, to work with these countries to find a financing solution that draws on domestic resources in a successful manner and in a manner that's not going to overburden future generations with debt.
There's a lot of background work needed, negotiations between countries on a granular level, involving customs and rail and road authorities, chambers of commerce, for instance, to identify internal and regional bottlenecks, and it's essential that documents are harmonized.
Once you sort these out, then you can go abroad and sell your project. If you did all these, then investors will automatically be interested if they see the seriousness. Otherwise, if there are fits and starts about negotiating just one part of the project, one part of the administrative aspect and so on, it will drag on and it will not attract anyone.
There's definitely a blueprint when it comes to the BTK project, and lessons learned there can be adapted and used on the African continent in all 54 states. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Tshwane, South Africa.
Another country that's going to be represented at the Belt and Road Forum is Tunisia. The country's Premier, Youssef Chahed, led a delegation of ministers and businessmen to attend the last forum on China-Africa cooperation in 2018, after which he stressed the importance of the next Belt and Road Summit.
The Tunisian government has called for increased economic cooperation with China. The North African country relies on Chinese technical expertise and funds to implement new projects nationwide.
We have pushed for a new dynamic for the Tunisian-Chinese ties. We are working together on several mega projects in infrastructure and other domains. China is an important partner.
Chahed hopes the upcoming Belt and Road Summit will increase investment partnership between China and Tunisia.
The summit in April will be successful. It's an opportunity for public and private sectors in Tunisia to take advantage of the many economic opportunities with China.
Tunisian parliamentarians from all groups and parties assert that the Belt and Road Initiative is the most ambitious and successful economic project of the 21st century. MPs have also called for strengthening ties between Tunis and Beijing. Tunisian lawmakers echo those sentiments.
The Belt and Road Initiative is unprecedented in human history. It has modernized infrastructure in Asia and Africa and has created jobs in hundreds of cities, including here in Tunisia and the African continent. The NEWT summit in April will open the door for greater economic partnership between China and the world.
Growing cultural relations between China and Tunisia are an example of the direct results brought on by the Belt and Road project. In fact, cultural and civilization dialogue are among the pillars of China's global initiative. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
6 years on, what is the state of the Belt and Road? And how is the progress?
Where are the challenges? Who is building, connecting, and benefiting?
Our global correspondents bring you personal insights, live business reports,
Interviews with the major players, investigation and analysis.
For comprehensive coverage of the Belt and Road Forum, stay tuned to CGTN.
About 100 young African military officials continued their week-long visit to China as African countries seek to strengthen their defence engagement with China. The military officials are visiting some of China's most prestigious military academies and support facilities. China continues to provide comprehensive support to Africa's security sector. Beatrice Marshall tells us more.
It is a mission built on mutual trust. Young military officers from 45 African countries are touring China's defense industry. part of a week-long visit aimed at strengthening China-Africa cooperation in peace and security. China's strategic military partnership with Africa dates back to the liberation struggles of the 1960s. That military engagement received a major boost last September when President Xi Jinping announced a host of new measures during the FOCAC summit. Among them, strengthening China's defense engagement with African countries. These include helping Africa build its own peacekeeping capacity, expanding military personnel training, and establishing a China-Africa Peace and Security Forum as a platform for conducting exchanges in this area. Efforts that are beginning to bear fruit.
Currently, I'm stationed in Douala. We have a continental logistics base in Douala. With a conceptualized vision of having regional logistics depot in support of the African Standby Force.
The week-long tour will also take the soldiers to military academies and units around Beijing. Already, they visited Yangkun Air Force Base in Tianjin, the prestigious base for the August 1st team of the People's Liberation Army. They seek to further enhance defense networks between Chinese officers and their African counterparts.
It make improve our military culture, and it put us together as different army from different countries. The visit here is oriented to make us for us to see all the opportunities we can have here in China in terms of training and capacity building.
2019 is the first year of the implementation of the major outcomes reached at last year's FOCAC summit, where China and Africa also agreed to step up Belt and Road security cooperation. Areas of focus include railways, industrial parks, and major events, through sharing intelligence, technologies and experiences to improve Africa's ability to safeguard the security of domestic economic projects.
We saw the different things that our countries are missing. For example, the different units that we visited. What was very important to me was the college we visited yesterday, the simulations, how they simulate the different training, how when they train they have these different simulations where it's actually they are trying to demonstrate to the troops that are training how the different situations that they may be faced with during war.
The visit by the African military delegation shows the importance that the continent now attaches to its military ties with China, as China has emerged as a leading power in Africa's peace and security architecture. China's Belt and Road Initiative forges intertwining economic and security ties between China and Africa. The nation's role in managing peace and security challenges in Africa will ensure the long-term stability and economic development of African states. Beatrice Marshall, CGTN, Beijing, China.
Well, we are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including at least 50 people perish after heavy rains pound the coastal region in the eastern parts of South Africa. And what African leaders are proposing to address the transition in Sudan and the conflict in Libya.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt,
along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Some tragic developments coming out of South Africa now. At least 50 people have been killed in floods and mudslides as rains continue pounding the eastern parts of the country. The most affected regions include the coastal areas of Durban in the KwaZulu-Natal province. Rescue workers have been digging through collapsed buildings and homes, looking for possible survivors and bodies. Major roads in and around Durban remain closed. Last week, 13 people were killed when a church wall collapsed after days of heavy rains. Locals have expressed their fears as the rains intensify.
I was in the bar when the floor started cracking, and it made about a half-a-metre gap, and I jumped, and so did my grandson that was with me. And we ran through the TV lounge, and with that it collapsed, and with that the jacuzzi went, and it was about an hour later the garage went with my cars.
Meanwhile, weeks after the devastating cyclone Idai hit 3 countries in southern Africa, another potentially deadly tropical storm is bearing down on the same region. Cyclone Kenneth is expected to soon make landfall off Mozambique's coast. Hundreds of people were killed and many more are displaced in the wake of Cyclone Idai. Weather forecasters say Cyclone Kenneth will cause heavy rains, strong winds and high waves. Tanzania, Malawi and Zambia are also expected to be affected. Let's now turn to our continuing coverage of the transition in Sudan and the conflict in Libya. Protesters are planning to step up their campaign to have a civilian administration in Sudan. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who also chairs the African Union, says African leaders have agreed to extend the deadline to transfer power to civilians from the ruling Sudanese Military Council. Al-Sisi earlier called an emergency meeting in Cairo to discuss Sudan and Libya. He appealed to the international community to help end the conflict in the country. Here's Adel El-Bakhrouhi with more.
The Egyptian presidency announced that 12 African countries, including 7 heads of states, have attended Cairo's call for emergency summits about Sudan and Libya. AU has earlier given a 2-week ultimatum to the Sudanese Military Council to hand power to civilian government. El-Sisi seems to have convinced African leaders that more time is needed.
Under these sensitive historic events in Sudan and the importance of the political transition, in addition to the security challenges, the economic circumstances are an obstacle to this path. The international community must provide support for Sudan and assist its peaceful transition. Its regional brothers must provide aid to create the environment required.
Consensus has been reached in Cairo to support Sudan's unity and economic development. The summit urged Sudanese powers to restore constitutional governance and encourage constructive talks. Egypt is already suffering from the instability in Libya. It doesn't want its southern neighbor face similar consequences.
Foreign interventions in African conflicts are a huge challenge. It harms the region's stability. The Egyptian leadership wants to open dialogue with regional partners to solve these challenges effectively.
African solutions for African challenges. That's the AU principal President el-Sisi is trying to implement to prevent Sudan from falling into a conflict and help Libya get out of its own. Adel El-Bakhrouhi, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, a high-ranking aide of Libyan commander Khalifa Haftar has arrived in Russia. Heri Al-Tamir is attending the Moscow Conference on International Security. Russia has been a long-time supporter of Haftar. General Haftar's Libya National Army troops have been fighting since early April to take control of the country's capital, Tripoli. Russia's defense and foreign ministers will be speaking at the conference's opening session. The UN-backed and internationally recognized government has been pushing back Haftar's troops. The fighting has displaced thousands, with the death toll reaching 264. To Zimbabwe now, ordinary citizens are suffering from their nation's economic challenges. Fuel queues, inadequate drug supplies at health institutions, and the increasing cost of living are now part of daily life for many. Basic commodities like bread nearly doubled in price last week. Businesses say a shortage of foreign currency and the depreciating local currency is to blame. The government is looking to boost production and tap into mineral resources to resuscitate the economy. Foreign companies like China's Anjian Investments have been selected to help revive the diamond mining sector. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa has called for economic cooperation, asking the business community to help cushion citizens from further economic hardships.
We do not want to go to a situation where the government is forced to regulate on prices. I'm against the regulation of prices. I would want prices to be regulated by market forces. However, those in business, our compatriots, should realize, should have a human face when they're making their profits. They should not go into business for making super profits the same day they begin the businesses.
In North Africa, Egyptians recently voted in favour of a host of constitutional changes that could see President al-Sisi remain in office until 2030. Egypt's election committee said yes voters made up 88.8% of eligible votes. Here's CGTN's Adel El-Mahrouki with more.
A sweeping 88.8% has brought victory for the yes voters in Egypt's referendum. The turnout, however, was not stunning. Only 44.3% of Egyptians had their say in the vote.
Great people of Egypt, from now onwards, you will have a parliament of two chambers. One is the House of Representatives and the other is a Senate. Women have a minimum of a quarter of the parliament seats. From today, presidential terms have become 6 years. You now have a constitution with new features. Congratulations.
The constitutional amendments will see the formation of a high judicial council headed by the Egyptian president. It also makes the Egyptian military the guardian of the civil state and prohibits a president from appointing a defense minister without the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces' approval.
I respect both the yes and no voters. Personally, I voted yes because I felt that it's important to bring back the representation of farmers and laborers in the parliament. In addition to the minimum women's quota, stability in the leadership is good. With quick change, people with different ideas will come, and no plan for the country will be complete.
The Constitution's amendments take place effective immediately. 24 million Egyptians believe that these changes will bring stability and renaissance to the country. Adel El-Mahrouki, CGTN, Cairo.
To Malawi now, and the country is rolling out the first ever malaria vaccine. This vaccine aims to prevent malaria transmissions, which kill hundreds of thousands across Africa each year.
Known as RTSS, a vaccine for one of the world's greatest killers took 30 years to be developed.
The world has been for the last 100 years looking for a malaria vaccine. And what we're witnessing today is the deployment for the first time in history of a malaria vaccine, which happens to also be a first vaccine against a human malaria parasite. So this is a massive success of the research community producing a vaccine against the parasite, a vaccine against the malaria.
Malawi is one of the African countries hardest hit by the disease, with at least 3,000 deaths reported each year.
I would say we register about 8 deaths every day. So it's quite a huge problem, public health problem in Malawi, and that's why this malaria vaccine, which has potential to prevent some cases and also save some lives. As a country, we're quite positive about it, and they were happy that we're introducing this vaccine.
The vaccine is expected to be rolled out in Ghana and Kenya in the coming weeks. According to the World Health Organization, it was found to prevent 6 out of 10 cases of severe malaria anemia, the leading cause of death in children.
This is a really exciting vaccine that starts being deployed today with a modest efficacy, but one which we believe can be translated into massive impact. But of course, we want better vaccines. And so we are very keen and watch very carefully the efforts that are taking place in different labs and companies across the world to develop newer vaccines.
Malaria is one of the world's greatest killer diseases, leading to more than 435,000 deaths each year, that according to the World Health Organization. In Africa alone, more than 250,000 children die each year from the disease. The WHO hopes that this rollout will reduce the number of malaria-related deaths. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
To South Africa now, where a community project seeks to promote the health benefits of the moringa tree. The project is headed by a farmer based in Limpopo province. Moringa is endorsed by the World Health Organization as a fundamental building block for healthy development. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
Tushaho Matabata plants moringa trees on a farm. He then crushes moringa leaves to produce capsules, tea bags and other products.
What we are doing at the farm, we are packaging it into various type of packages. There's the loose leaf tea, there's the powder, there's the capsules, and there's the moringa rooibos blend, and there's also what we call a special blend. All of this, the loose leaf tea, the capsules and the tea bags, it's just packaged differently, but all have the same benefits. It's just the preference of the market out there.
The moringa tree is easily cultivated in semi-arid areas, grows quickly and is not invasive.
It is recognized as a health tree because it's when you eat this plant of moringa, it got 7 times what you get from spinach. It's got 3 times your vitamin C, 4 times your calcium. Apart from that, it helps your immune system. It helps your sugar levels drop. It takes your diabetes down.
In a rural setting of Limpopo province, moringa tree products have reduced malnutrition amongst children supported by the organization.
Apart from that, there's a nursery that we erected that is to help in replanting if we want to expand. Like now there's a need for us to expand the whole 15 hectares. We have planted so many trees in the nursery, so it's gonna help us to expand. And also, apart from helping us to plant, whoever wants to buy seedlings, we do sell from the nursery.
For Matabata, this is a family legacy that he needs to ensure that it stands the test of time.
It was an influence from my mother, who started this moringa farming from nowhere. I got the influence from her. After doing my research, I saw a potential in moringa and the farming of it.
It's not only the health well-being that this community benefits from.
We are employing the community here and they're seeing the benefits of it. We are employing about 25 seasonal workers and 15 permanent workers. Those seasonal workers, they're seasonal, we deem them seasonal because but they are here for almost 9 months a year.
Matabata has ambitious plans. Matabata is already exporting the highly nutritious moringa to the United States. He now wants to export it to various countries as soon as he possibly can. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Limpopo Province, South Africa.
Well, let's now go to Panina for all the latest business news. Over to you.
Thank you, Karen. And coming up on Africa Live Business, global commodities giant Olam offers to buy Nigerian miller. And a special investigation into the extent of gold smuggling in Africa.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Agribusiness company Olam International has launched a $360 million bid to buy Dangote Flour Mills PLC. The offer values the Lagos-based milling company at $175 million, including debt. Listed on Nigeria Stock Exchange, the company's share price rose 9.8% to 33 cents. This proposal comes as the Singapore-based company looks to refocus in Africa. Founded in 1989, Olam was established in Nigeria as an exporter of cashew nuts. It has since grown into a global force with operations in more than 60 countries and a market value of $4.5 billion. Earlier this year, the firm announced plans to exit sugar and 3 other commodities, releasing $1.6 billion for investments. Consistent energy supply is the lifeblood of any economy, and it's something that's not happening in South Africa. Eskom, the country's power utility, has an aging fleet of coal-fired power stations. Massive delays in the completion of its 2 newest power plants have led to blackouts as well as government bailouts as Eskom struggles to pay off its massive debt burden. Here's CGTN's Angela Coppola with the details.
The current instability at Eskom isn't good news for heavy users of electricity like the steel sector.
You find that non-supply of electricity and increasing cost of electricity is becoming a problem to the subsectors, because ferrochrome is a very important product that is being used to manufacture stainless steel, and stainless steel is a very important intermediary input that's being used to manufacture cars. So you've got this positive, negative knock-on effect and leading to increase in production cost.
The mining sector, on the other hand, is looking for its own solutions from renewable energy and topping that up with a mix of hybrids, diesel and fuel cells. It's a move away from Eskom and an attempt to lighten the fiscal load involved in bailing out the ailing utility.
I think the mining industry has come together and said, listen, we will deliver our own solutions. We'll pay for our own solutions. It doesn't have to come out of the national pocket. It doesn't have to come out of Treasury. And it doesn't have to cost everybody a massive power increase at every home user to get power into businesses again. What we need is to break the bureaucracy. We've got to cut the red tape and let industry solve the problem.
If solutions aren't found and found quickly, businesses will close and thousands of jobs will be lost. The mining sector estimates that it could lose more than 100,000 jobs if something isn't done. The potential fallout in the metals sector is as concerning.
The subcomponents within our cluster, including the ferrochrome, they spend about 3% of the electricity cost expenditures, about 3%. But if we were to look at the rand value of that, it's about 14 billion rand, which is a significant amount, and it tends to eat into the margins of businesses.
The problem, say economists, isn't the big players that can afford the tens and hundreds of millions needed to build their own power stations.
Our concern is for the small and medium enterprises. We have over 60% to 65% of our businesses that are classified as small or medium enterprises. So our concern is that these businesses are going to close down, and there's a direct correlation between these businesses and employment that they offer. So we're very worried that the official unemployment rate of 27.1% is going to increase.
Business users and small consumers don't really worry themselves about whether the utility is solvent or not. They simply want electricity at an affordable price, and they're not getting that right now. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Billions of dollars worth of gold is being smuggled out of Africa every year and funneled through the United Arab Emirates. New investigations indicate that gold smuggling activities have surged lately. Western countries are stepping back from directly handling the mineral over human rights and environmental concerns. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has more.
Reuters has released a new report showing the scale of the black market trade in gold in Africa. Most of it is going to Dubai, where the gold is put into refineries and markets for destinations elsewhere. Informal methods of gold production, known in the industry as artisanal or small-scale mining, are growing globally. They have provided a livelihood to millions of Africans and helped some make more money than they could ever dream of from traditional trades. But the methods leak chemicals into rocks, soil, and rivers.
This bar is a product of my hard work. When we get the gold, we take it to Tarkwa because that's where our buyers are located. Gold has value. Even with a small sample, you can get a lot of money to take care of your family.
While accurate statistics are not available, the UN Customs and Trade data show that the United Arab Emirates declared imports of $15 billion in gold from 46 African countries in 2016. But of that 15 billion, roughly half of it, or 7 billion, came from 25 African countries that listed no exports of gold at all to the Emirates. Trade economists say that the discrepancy points to massive quantities of smuggling, and African states get none of the benefits from export taxes. Ghana is one of those countries.
The Ghanaian government says that this unregulated artisanal mining has to stop. They say that it is wrecking the environment, polluting rivers, and poisoning farmland with toxic levels of mercury. To which the miners reply, well, that's all very well, but what else are you going to give us to do? There are no other jobs around here, and even the few that there are don't pay anything like as well as gold. Mining, they say, has enabled us to feed our families, build our houses, and educate our children, so that maybe one day they will have more options and will be in a position to do something better than this.
Most Western countries don't directly handle African gold because of these and human rights concerns, as well as worries it may help fund conflicts. These problems are less of a concern in the United Arab Emirates, and the relationship is growing, and some miners wouldn't have it any other way.
Without mining, they say, they won't be able to do any of these things. It's a dilemma facing so many poor countries sitting on most of the gold that the rich world wants. And it's one that very few have any idea how to resolve.
Some African miners are swapping their pickaxes and shovels for diggers and crushers, increasing production volumes exponentially. Regulations remain scant and accidents are frequent. African governments such as Ghana, Tanzania and Zambia complain that gold is now being illegally produced and smuggled out of their countries on a vast scale, sometimes by criminal operations, and often at a high human and environmental cost. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
South African telecoms firm MTN has announced that it has completed its Nigerian arms conversion from a private company to a public liability company. The conversion was a legal requirement and key milestone in the preparatory process for the listing on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Nigeria is MTN's biggest market with 52.3 million users and accounts for a third of the firm's annual profits. In December last year, it agreed to pay a $53 million payment to resolve a dispute in Nigeria, which resulted in a downfall in share price. In March, MTN announced its earnings for the 2018 financial year, recording revenue growth of 72.2%, earning $2.7 billion. Let's leave it there for now. But coming up on Global Business, we'll look at how the China-led Belt and Road Initiative is transforming economic development in Africa. That's at the top of the hour. I'll see you then. For now, back to you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Vanina. Well, we are going to a short break. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including how a South African artist is creating impressive sculptures by manipulating light.
On May 8th, 27 million South Africans go to the polls. Africa's most industrialized nation is just emerging from recession and still faces enormous economic challenges. Join us on Global Business Africa for a week of in-depth coverage and analysis on the state of the country's economy. A different perspective of events shaping South Africa. Africa Live. Find your voice.
A South African artist is manipulating light to create one-off sculptures. Lota Botcha uses little-used techniques such as grinding and polishing of glass to create his unique work. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela with the details.
Lota Botcha uses glass to manipulate light, to create another dimension, to entice the viewers to look through the glass and see the adjoining space within and beyond. That way, stimulating thought and awareness, trying to make sense of the universe and our place in it.
Glass and light are married. It's through glass that we see the world outside while we drive the car. So glass lets light through. But the way that I use the glass, I grind and polish facets, and the way then that glass reflects and refracts the light is part of my tool that I use. Changing maybe perceptions of the here and now.
Botcha says in this age of digitized mass media and the constant consumption of second-hand experiences, people often miss the details. So, with his sculptural endeavors, he attempts to bring this experience of immediacy back into our lives. Everything here is handmade.
Because everything is made by hand, my process is I start with a block, I cut it with a diamond saw by hand, I grind and I polish everything by hand. So there is always, not one is unique. Although I do have series, like my skull series that I'm working on, and I've got my rock blossoms. They follow a similar theme, but they all different explorations into the theme.
Outside of glass, Botcha uses other mediums, including local materials.
I use sandstone that comes from where I live, where I grew up. It's part of the Magaliesberg range, which is one of the oldest mountain ranges on the world, in the world, on our planet. And the sandstone has got over and above the fact that it's old, has another peculiar aspect to it. It is the origins of glass. So over the years and over the eons, the sandstone erodes into sand, and sand is the main constituent of glass.
Botcha is so keen to ensure that what he calls glass community grows here in South Africa.
South Africa has got a very small glass community if you compare it to Europe and the USA. I think China has got a growing appreciation for it with the Shanghai Museum of Glass that opened also a few years back. But all in all, I think the future has a lot of possibilities for the handmade glass industry. So we have to work hard, and I think the results will show it.
Botcha's glass gear is also in great demand. Glass has been part of Botcha's composition for the past 2 decades. He's got a number of awards behind his name and is likely going to get more and more awards as his work is much acclaimed and quite popular. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Here's another artist considered to be a grandfather of modern Nigerian art. Bruce Onobrakpeya has been exhibiting some of his latest works in the Nigerian commercial city of Lagos. The exhibition, Beauty in the Machine, features work made from recycled materials. CGTN's Deji Badmus has the story.
It's by far one of the strongest showcase of recycled art in Nigeria. And it comes from none other than the acclaimed Nigerian printmaker, painter and sculptor, Bruce Onobrakpeya. This is Onobrakpeya's 60th solo exhibition dating from 1959. The bulk of the works on display here are made from recycled materials, mainly from discarded scraps from car engines and computers. The Nigerian art grandmaster digs deep into his inner recesses to compose bits and pieces of waste materials into art forms with new meanings and functions.
This is recycled art, but I'm trying to show that when the machine has lived its when a machine has lived its normal life, and you put the engine into pieces, what you see there is quite beautiful. In other words, the artwork or the scraps or the engine has reincarnated. Some kind of metamorphosis has taken place and it has a new life. So it is that new life that I'm presenting.
Titled Ladipo Market, a major automobile spare parts market in Lagos, this work is made from discarded scraps from automobile engines, which the artist has creatively pieced together to form a whole new meaning.
Ladipo Market is like one Nigeria, because you see everyone, every ethnic group, every ethnic group there. It's there, and life spills around. There are all kinds of experiences. People are preaching on one hand, they are dancing on the other hand, and sometimes they are fighting, and then they are buying things. And then important people have their cars by the side of the road and they are repairing. So what you see in the Ladipo Market area is a very interesting form of art.
Bruce Onobrakbaya is a deeply traditional man from the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. It's no surprise, therefore, to find local traditions infused into most of his works. This one is a blend of tradition and the modern. The electronic chips unobtrusively blending with ancient Nigerian tradition.
So I'm trying to say that there is a post-African art. Most people don't think that there's something like that, but there's post-African art. And what you see there is a transition between the old art and the new art, the contemporary art. So the contemporary art is really in the country, in Africa, is a post-African art.
The exhibition has been attracting a lot of attention, with art patrons thronging the venue to see and feel some of the works.
I am particularly struck by this shrine, where Onobrakbaya has achieved his characteristic technique of being able to integrate materials from different sources to create something that has a mystical aura about it, as he has done here, for example.
Each of the works in general, they, aside from being byproducts of waste materials, they all have a particular story they tell. So it's not just, we are not just pushing recycled art. We also have a thematic standing, which is the focus of the exhibition too.
It's quite fascinating how bits and pieces of trash could be put together to tell a wonderful story and depict the reality of our daily lives. Bruce Onobrakbaya has not only demonstrated that he is an artist, he's also clearly demonstrated that he is a fascinating storyteller. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
All the sports news coming up after the break, including Manchester City backs under fire Algerian striker Riyad Mahrez.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Under fire, Algerian international Riyad Mahrez has been a subject of transfer rumours lately as the English Premier League season gets into the last stretch. The former Leicester star signed for a club record fee of